Welcome to Marsha's Play.
Hey, what's up? This is your girl Diamond. I am here with two amazing people that I love, not only in my leadership life, but also in my personal life that I have grown to consider friends. And it is Aria and Mariah Moore. Aria is the founder of the Transgender Cultural District, and Mariah Moore is the co-founder of House of Tulip. So we wanted to bring them on to kind of share their brilliance with y'all and have some kiki girl, black trans girl fun. So on Marsha's Plate. So why I wanted to really, welcome to Marsha's Plate.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
So I wanted to start off because what I found interesting in researching about y'all it's kind of funny when I have guests on the show that are my friends, because I kind of feel like I know stuff, and then it's like as I get to Googling and I'm like, oh, that's cute. So I love that part of searching for my friends, and so I was trying to find a thread that both of you all share. And a thread that I found quite interesting is that both of y'all are from cities that at some point in our country's history were queer meccas. And now we see, based on that history, what's happening now in this current time is that we see a lot of gentrification of our areas and our culture and our city. And we're kind of slowly being erased. So I want to start off with you, Aria. Due to the capitalistic nature of Silicon Valley, which is the home of some of the largest technology corporations in the world, San Francisco, or the Bay Area, has one of the highest cost of livings in the world. Yeah. And so that has pushed a lot of Black people out, a lot of trans people out, and just kind of shuffled us around the city in a different way, which in turn exacerbates the gentrification and erasure of trans culture. And so that's one of the reasons why you led and founded Trans Cultural District. Can you talk about what you have seen over the years in you just made 30 last week, in your little years? Can you talk about how how that inspired your work?
So I am a trans woman who came to San Francisco because it was a place that everyone told me I would find like liberation and equality and acceptance as a young trans person. And like so many trans people that come from all across the United States and across the world, we all end up in the Tenderloin neighborhood. And I think part of that is, sorry, y'all froze on my side, but I think part of it is that the Tenderloin has traditionally been a container space for, I like to call it like the red light, all the things related to the red light district / the undesirable things of San Francisco. But the Tenderloin holds the densest transgender population of any other neighborhood in a United States metropolitan city. And like you said, like the tech industry coming to San Francisco and the Bay Area and really sort of shifting who gets to live here has adversely impacted our community. Yet and still, however, so many trans people call the Tenderloin home or have a connection to it. And I think, that really played a role in the formation of the trans district and our desire for a neighborhood that so many of us have a connection to actually being like our own little utopia, and like what possibilities could come out of that.
Mariah, you too. So you come from New Orleans. New Orleans, because of Katrina, not that they weren't trying it before, but because of Katrina, it exacerbated the problem of gentrification. Not only did this big natural disaster push people into other cities and push people out of the cities, but it also allowed, companies and white folks to come in and buy up land that particularly a lot of Black folks lived in New Orleans. I know one of our personal friends, we're not going to say her name, but one of our personal friends, she went through an issue where she was homeless during Katrina, didn't have anywhere to go. And then she comes back to the city that she loves and she can't even stay or afford the city, the place where she used to stay. So can you talk about how you saw that affect your city and affect the trans culture?
New Orleans was a huge and robust city before Katrina. And I want to just make this clear that New Orleans will never be the same. Like New Orleans as we know it will forever cease to exist. There will be other versions that come along, but nothing like the New Orleans that we knew. Before Katrina, they were the medical industrial complex, the big pharma. They were partnering together to eviscerate a whole historically Black neighborhood to put a hospital in its place. And when Katrina, that was where now stands University Medical Center, which is ran by LSU. It replaced Charity Hospital. And so that was already something that was being planned. They were planning to take that land and to turn it into a medical industrial complex. Into what it is today. And Hurricane Katrina just so happened to happen, which made it that much easier for that to progress and for that to actually, for that project to actually come to life. Yes, these people came into our city. They acquired land illegally because they said things like, well, these people aren't reachable. We don't know where they might be. They owe property taxes, all sorts of things that are just very illegal. But because Louisiana has such wide laws, it allowed them to do these things, right? It allowed them, and till this day, people still have properties that are being adjudicated because they were illegally sold or auctioned. And so, the trans community, most of us were renters, right? And so think about how many of these rental properties there were before the storm versus, and how they were mostly privately owned. So a lot of these properties were properties that have been historically passed down. When we talk about generational, like in Black families, these houses had been passed down. A lot of these were rental properties. A lot of these were rented out by folks who, just to be clear, like New Orleans is known for hospitality and our hospitality industry. So at the end of the day, when this new system of market pricing and credit scoring and that whole number where you fall on the risk assessment to rent to came along, New Orleanians, a large majority of New Orleanians they didn't even fit that criteria. So let alone the trans community. The French Quarter was the home of the girls. We had Papa Joe's, we had the Roundup, we had Double Play, had all these bars that the girls made a very good living in. It was safe for the most part. And the girls were always on the block.
I remember when I was in school at Jackson State, we would travel down to New Orleans, and it was so amazing. This is 2001. And I remember going down there, and I'm with a bunch of cis girls, like it's like 6 of us in total.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only trans girl with them. And I'm walking down Bourbon, and I see the trans girls with their signs at Papa Joe's in the middle of this really like this almost cisgender mecca of bars and things. And the trans girls is like, ah, with their signs trying to get people to come in. And just the fact that they were in the middle of this it's almost like this party that was happening. I was like, wow, this is kind of progressive as fuck at the time because I was young. I was like 20, and I was like, I've never seen my city. I come from Mississippi folks and Indiana folks. So in my cities, I had never experienced trans folks being a center, and even though it's kind of like marginalized, it's still they had a place in this culture here, and it was so amazing for me to see that. So I definitely remember the pre-Katrina time when the girls were, I don't want to say thriving, but they were a part of the culture.
We don't have any of those spots anymore that really cater to the girls. You know, we barely have anything that is black that caters to LGBTQ, the black LGBTQ community. I mean, we have the page that's left, and the gallery, which was newly open, but this New Orleans has erased so much of our rich culture that we knew, and it's just increasingly disappearing every single day. You know, you can barely find an apartment to rent that's below $2,000. That's unheard of in New Orleans.
So, Aria, with the Transcultural District in San Francisco, how are you using that as a tool to combat what we are discussing?
So much of what Mariah said about the context of New Orleans just made me think of all the things that we used to have in here for trans people in our neighborhood, and how much of that is actually gone. And we're seeing that too in the Castro. You know, San Francisco is famous for the Castro. And so many of those businesses are before the pandemic were struggling, but even with the pandemic now are struggling because the landscape of their neighborhood has changed as well. Gentrification happens in so many different ways, and like when gay white folks move into a neighborhood, there is a way that it makes it more desirable for other communities to come and want to live there. And I think the Castro is having an experience where they made it so desirable that now a lot of them are pushed out and priced out. And so cis white folks are moving in with their, you know, having babies and stuff, and going to the city hall and protesting like the traditions of the Castro. Like a lot of people walk around nude in the Castro. Like there's like a lot of nudists, and like they're trying to take that away now. And like, you know, this is a community that created a culture for itself. And so, yeah, the trans district, I think we have so much that we are struggling with because a lot of, you know, for those listening, you know, there's so many loose examples of what a cultural district can be and is. And no matter what city you go to, you can probably find a Chinatown, you know, maybe a Little Italy or Old Ukrainia, or, you know, an area that is populated by a particular community that has a history and a presence, and has a generational stake in that neighborhood, and really create their own economy. And the rest of us who are not a part of those communities get to come in and get a taste of the culture, and to buy local, and support their economy. And the trans district, you know, I think we are definitely inspired by the legacy and the impact that Chinatown here has. It is a lot of people don't know San Francisco has the largest Chinese population outside of China. And there's such a richness to San Francisco's Chinatown in particular. It's a place that like a lot of the fortune cookies in the United States were made here. Like there's so many different things, so much rich history. And so we, you know, of course we want this neighborhood to be that space. But we also have to acknowledge that we don't have the same access that those communities had. Like we don't have, you know, trans grandparents that are passing down their restaurant or store or bookstore or bank or whatever to, trans children and creating that generational wealth. And our community here in San Francisco, I think every city has a lot of the same things when it comes to disparity for our girls and all trans people. But I think in San Francisco, our biggest struggle is that we don't have economic or housing solutions because San Francisco is the most expensive city in the world right now. Like a year ago, it was not uncommon for people to be renting a studio at $4,000 a month, and the prices just go up from there. We're seeing a shift with the pandemic, but I digress.
To add to that point, we also don't have the help of being a model minority, like the stereotype of being a model minority. We're not, sometimes Asian communities and other communities that are particularly non-Black ones, can be looked at as potential and potential to be the model minority. A trans woman can't be the model minority just based on the nature of how people think about transness. They're not going to think about investing in our community and giving us actual infrastructure to help us preserve our culture. What trans culture? What have you contributed? Like, at least them, because they have had this history in America of being placed as a model minority, they can look and say, ooh, this makes our city look culturally diverse if we invest in the Chinese community and give them money and give them structure on how to stay here. It makes our city look good. They don't look at our community as an investment or as a diverse, a contribution to the diversity makes the city look good.
Mm-hmm. Well, Diamond, to your point too, I think also we're in a tricky reality where both of these populations hold different fetishes for people. And so, white Americans have a fetish for Asian culture in a way that they do not for Black culture. They try Black culture on for size, but in braids or whatever makeup we're doing or our body shapes and whatnot. But I think culturally overall, like the broader public is mesmerized by the Orient and the East. And there's like a fetish there that's the culture, albeit fetishized, is still respected, right?
They don't deny it. When they steal our shit, they deny that they care, that they like it and want it and blah blah blah. They deny it. But when they steal their shit, it's like, oh, we just love the culture. They're not even saying they love our shit. They're just stealing it and trying to act like it's.
Well, they said, they say they don't admit where it was created or who created it. They take it on as their own, as if, with the whole the do-rag debacle. You remember that? Like this white woman creates this satin do-rag so that white women can wake up with perfect hair in the morning. What?
Get out of here.
Right. Like, come on now.
In the context of American culture, there's a fetish for Asian culture and cuisine and film and art, right? And then, of course, Asia is also a destination. So, people can fly there and immerse themselves in the experience. With trans people, the fetish is different. And we're not a destination in the same way. So, you can fly there. I just don't know if you'll fly back. But
that's the destination of paradise, though.
The district, unlike a lot of cultural districts, we're having to create a solid foundation for our community to be able to rise, so that 100 years from now, the vision that we had as founders of the district will actually be actualized and have evolved far beyond what I think any of us could imagine. And so we are trying to address it in multiple strategies, from, of course, showcasing transgender art and culture. And I think we've done tidbits these last 2 years, and we're about to go forward with some really exciting things to really showcase Obviously right now, like what is transgender culture, and how can the transgender cultural district play a part in expressing that to multiple audiences. But more importantly, we're also working towards economic empowerment, and very similar to House of Tulip, addressing a universal need that seems to exist no matter where you are in the United States as a trans person, which is equitable, safe, and affirming housing. And so I'm really excited about our entrepreneurship program because we know so many trans people who, poverty is a very interesting experience where we learn to be creative. I think poor folks are some of the most creative folks when you think about creativity, because, and especially as Black trans people, traditionally we've learned how to make a check. LOL. We've learned how to boost a look for the ball. We've learned how to use our skills to monetize, whether it be in sex work or doing hair or doing both or whatever it is, like playing on these things. I was just thinking about how back in the day, I remember cis women used to always ask if me or other girls would do hair, like y'all hair be looking so good, and how a couple girls I knew who were trans then were like, oh, okay, maybe if I do folks' hair, they think I'm gonna be the trusted stylist, just the things. And so yeah, our entrepreneurship program is really designed with Black trans people in mind, and folks who have multiple barriers to entrepreneurship, folks who otherwise would never consider themselves as possibly able to own a business. Maybe they have bad credit, maybe they just know that they wouldn't get a loan, or maybe it just seems too far-fetched. And obviously we're doing this in a pandemic, and so it can be a little scary, but we're taking folks through a program, a little boot camp, and helping them make that dream come true. And our hope is that we'll start to see this year the opening of stores and businesses owned by trans people in the neighborhood, and that in addition with our housing program, and then creating jobs and businesses, that we'll start to really see the skeleton of what the neighborhood can be, and start to actually see a shift in our disparity here.
Passing that question to you, Mariah, in the work that House of Tulip is doing. So I know in New Orleans, based on the U.S. Trans Survey, 1/3 of trans individuals in Louisiana will experience homelessness sometime in their life. So how is the work that you're doing impacting, combating this gentrification and giving infrastructure in the city for people who are going through this type of disparity to actually come up out of it and get into a better place, and not just a reoccurring cycle? Because I know you all are not positioning yourselves as a transitional living house. You're not positioning yourself as an emergency shelter. Y'all really are creating something that is leading to home ownership and leading to something, just a better situation for trans folks. Can you describe the work that you're doing?
I always like to tell people that statistic comes from the U.S. Trans Survey, but the real tea is right, is that in our community it's 100%. And I'm not saying that we've all been homeless, but we all have that proximity. It's 100%. Either you have faced it, either you have faced eviction, either you know someone who has been evicted or has been homeless. And when we say homeless, we don't mean that you're on the streets. You could be couch surfing. You could be living out of hotels. You know someone. So yes, I think it's 100% of trans folks of color in our city. Specifically, but House of Tulip, I also want to just name that we're providing long-term housing solutions, right? one part of that is providing emergency relief and emergency shelter, yes. But the second part of that is acquiring property, um, and acquiring it from preferably Black community, right? So the property that we just purchased in New Orleans, which is a 12-bedroom property, it was we bought it from a Black woman. Her husband had passed away, and she just no longer was able to keep the property up, and so that is the property that we're buying. We're also going to be buying small plots of land, and then when funding is continuous and stabilizes, we'll be putting homes, not tiny homes, but homes on those properties. And then we'll be putting our community members in a position to acquire those homes. And also, House of Tulip will help support them through that process, right? And incentivize them going through the process and supporting them with things like upkeep and utilities and how to maintain a property, right? So that's what we're positioning ourselves to do long term, right? That's how we're setting our organization up, and we're also setting it up in a way that it's sustainable to do that. And so that's how we're going to combat gentrification, is by keeping Black-owned properties Black, inside of a Black-led organization. And if we have to sell off a property or two to keep our doors open, who knows? That may be an option too, but we want to make sure that we're selling it back to our Black community, right? So that's the way that we're going to combat gentrification. But the most important thing to us right now is that we know that we are about to face upwards of 44 million evictions nationwide, and that we're working tirelessly to get these doors open so that our community will not be on the streets during a pandemic.
I always wondered that. I always wondered how has COVID altered your plans in regards to having a place, a shelter for people that's going to be coming in and out and that type of stuff. I always wonder how that has altered your programming. Has it altered any of your plans?
It definitely has, and we have to think about, like, people have to go in quarantine, right? So the first resident we take in will have to be in the home alone for 14 days by themselves, and then still have regular COVID testing, right? But there comes a point where it's like it's inevitable, because if said person gets a job, right? We can't isolate them forever, so I think one thing that we've talked about is, like, what does regular testing look like? What does non-essential work look like? What does non-essential travel look like? But also just realizing that most of the people that we're going to be serving were either in a position where they didn't have the protections that they needed on the street, but knowing that when they come in here, they won't be vulnerable to those situations, so we can kind of keep them in from that until there is some type of alternative to work or non-essential travel or social activities. So I don't want to frame it like, oh, you can't leave this place, but it's for the safety of everyone. We have to make sure that we're being responsible, and part of that is, if you don't have a job, we're not forcing you to get one right now. If you're not in school, we're not forcing you to go to school right now. Because one of the things at House of Tulip is, when you stay at House of Tulip, there are only two requirements that we have. Either we help you get a job, or we help put you through school. You pick one. And so, that's the only requirement that we have. Other than, staying safe, nonviolent. So yeah, but it has altered it, and I will tell you, it's been very frustrating because I'm not a CDC expert, and we haven't had much. We haven't had expert guidance from federal administration. Nor do we have any kind of solutions. The only solutions that we really had are wear a mask and stay inside, isolated from everyone.
And you say that like a true organizer, because that's how we always think. We like, what's the solutions that's gonna happen? It's kind of strange being in a situation where we don't know the virus well enough. We can't really have any solutions. I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago about those being the two requirements, because I don't think that's too much. But one of the things that we do as program creators and people who lead actual impactful work in community, that we all do, I wanna talk about how important it is to provide zero barrier programming for our community. And can you talk a little bit more about that?
A lot of times we see I'll use an example of a certain organization or healthcare organization we have here in New Orleans, and one of the only ways that you can get assistance from them is if you're a person that's living with HIV, right? Which poses a barrier to people who aren't living with HIV but have other healthcare or access needs to healthcare. In order to get the resources to pay their rent or to get bus tokens or vouchers to get blood pressure medications. There are all types of barriers there, so it almost it glamorizes it glamorizes the life of our community members who are living with HIV, because in their mind they think, well, if I get HIV, then all my rent will be paid and it'll be much easier. But we know that's not the case. Similarly to like a lot of these housing programs, right? Either you have to be a cis woman with child to be housed or sheltered, or you have to be a cisgender man in order to be sheltered. It can't be anything in between. You can't be navigating sobriety, right? So you people with disabilities, they're not accommodating, or nor do they have the access that they need. And so really, when we were thinking about what it really means to be zero barrier, right? It's like, how can we accommodate people who are navigating sobriety? And what that looks like. I mean, I myself have navigated sobriety, like when I was heavily involved in sex work, I found myself self-medicating just to keep myself fed and housed, right? But to also just numb the fact that I really got to do this every day. And so what does that look like? What does it look like for someone with an animal that they just can't part with because that's the only family that they know, right? And so they really can't access these other shelters because they don't allow pets, right? What does it look like for a person who has a power chair, right? That, they're trying to go into the Salvation Army, but there's no accessibility there. What if we have someone working at Burger King who doesn't meet the income requirement, but also doesn't make enough money to satisfy the market rent, right? Hence them being homeless. So it's like we think about all these different things that adversely affect our communities. And it's just like, if it's not this, it's that. And so we have to really just think about a way and like, what does it mean to really provide affordable yet zero barrier housing? But we wanted to remove the affordable piece completely because, the first stages of House of Tulip, you're not paying anything. No one is paying anything. And so, and that's one thing that we were trying to talk to our mayor about is, what does it truly look like to eradicate homelessness, removing the financial component, right? We can afford to do it because let me tell you why they can afford to do it. Because at the beginning of the pandemic, they were forced to buy out hotels for the homeless population for months at a time. And we're not just talking about the Fleabag hotels or the pay by hour hotels. We're talking about Hiltons and Ritz-Carltons and JW Marriott. And they're not cutting a deal with you. you're paying their nightly rate. So if you could do that, if you were forced to do that, all of that money that you spent on that, you could develop a whole program to combat homelessness.
I want to be petty for a little bit because you made me think about something that happened to us, Black Trans Women's Inc. this morning. So we had a food pantry thing where we were mailing people who couldn't get out of their house food, like boxes of food and stuff that was donated to us, right? This white single mother commented on our stuff this morning and she said, so what you're saying is that you have to be a trans woman to receive food for y'all? What if I'm a single mother who needs help? This is a white woman commenting on our post, really not understanding how we need to be specific. You are a white woman you just talked about how sometimes barriers, you gave an example of being a single mother gives you access to certain programming. And you're sitting here coming to a trans-led org that is meant to help one of the most disparaged populations.
Honey, you can go in the stamp office right now. They're gonna roll out the red carpet for you and print you a card and put your yamps on the same day. I know some girls that's getting $13 in stamps that ain't got a window, a pot, or a coin, and only got approved for $13. Girl, stop playing in my face.
Stop playing in my face. Thinking about disparity. So there's a beautiful quote by you, Aria, that I think is amazing, that I think really I felt it. You said, our disparity is real. Absolutely. But so is our joy, so is our resilience, so is our power, so is our beauty. And these attributes are what shape us and have influence in the world. I think that that's amazing, particularly because there's also a program that you do, the Queen Culture Initiative, which is a social power empowerment movement where you are literally creating moments and creating a sisterhood and highlighting the joys that happen when we come together and when we actually create culture. So I wanted you to talk about that too, because a lot of times, especially in the nonprofit sector, because it's turning into a hustle, we're getting on the stage and all the panels and like, oh, woe is me, oh, woe is trans life, and oh, all these things against me, which certain things can be true, but there's a certain narrative that is not allowing us to be full human beings, that along with this disparity, we also have so much great things to offer that we see when we come together as trans women. So can you talk about why focusing on that joy, focusing on the beauty and the culture of what we do and who we are, and cultivating those moments for us as a community who don't have access to a lot of things, cultivating those great, beautiful moments are important to your work?
Our disparity is real because, we know that as trans people, we are oppressed at every level of society. And that is very, very real. We never want to gloss over that reality. But I also think it is destructive and disempowering when we don't also allow the nuances of our experience to be seen. And so much of my experience with other trans women has always been full of joy and camaraderie. And I think it's a really dangerous lie to just promote the disparity, to activate like the trauma porn of our lives, and to not also be working towards building how we can come together and have access to spaces that are not designed for us, and to find ways to actually empower trans women to see themselves and to experience these moments with each other. Because to me, that's what keeps us. That's what, when we're isolated, when we're struggling with depression, when we're at home and we start to, look within and question whether life is worth living or, all those things. Those moments, those beautiful moments of life is what we hawk back to. And so I think, that's why I always say that queen culture was definitely like, it was sort of dreamed up in a way as my own sort of therapy. And I figured if I needed it, then so many other people needed it. Because, for our work, all of us can relate. At the time that I created Queen Culture, excuse me, I was traveling the country. I was doing speaking engagements, specifically for tech companies and corporations. And, they would have me on stage and, I'd show up happy to do the gig, happy to meet people. I can be bubbly. And then they'd be like, what's the one thing they need to know about trans people? or you guys are so marginalized and disenfranchised, like you guys just don't have any privilege and life is really hard for you guys and da, 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 da. And I'm like, my life is great. Like, I mean, I still deal with the issues that every trans woman in America is dealing with, but I have friends that I love, like like life is both very complicated and then also like inspiring. Like I don't, who wants to wake up every morning and own this idea of like trans people are marginalized and disenfranchised and experience high rates of violence and discrimination and unemployment and murder and violence and HIV and like who wants to wake up and be like, yes, I'm proud of that. Like that's hard. And it's a it's a weight that I don't think we as trans people should have to carry. In this moment of visibility, I think we can also be like, yes, and there is nothing like when a group of Black trans women come together and we celebrate each other and hang out and just play the dozens, read, kiki, like, there's nothing like that. Those are my best moments when I think of my experiences with other Black trans people. Even when I didn't have any money, I was sleeping on the train and stuff, and I would go to the block to do, sex work. What I remember, I don't remember getting into the nasty tricks as cars and, dropping down and getting my eagle on for for $40 or whatever. I don't remember those moments. Thank you, Jesus. But I do remember. I do remember, running into the girls on the block and kikiing, and those are the moments that come to mind when I'm like, oh, those were the good days. Like, no, girl, no, they weren't. But but it's those women that I got to be around and learn so much from and see. And so that's what, queen culture is all about. We've done a lot of different things. Like we've worked with Sephora to have the store closed down so that Black trans women can have a private luxury shopping experience, and kiki and talk about things like self-esteem and self-confidence, as it relates to makeup and beauty products or whatever. But then we've also done like the deeper dive efforts. Like we've done stuff with the Commonwealth Club to discuss like the state of violence against us, and having organizers like Diamond on the panel to talk about the nuances in the South in particular. And then I think we've become more famous just for the retreat. The retreat where we took, I think it was like 8 to 10 Black trans women to Hawaii, all expenses paid.
It was quite beautiful. I can't say that it was quite beautiful, but I also learned a lot. And in the experience, I was one of the facilitators. In the experience, we had some really, really intense moments. It was me and Valerie Spencer, who is a licensed therapist, and we really came together, really kind of cracking some things open within the community. There was some tears shed. Well, the group that was there was some tears shed. There was some, some yelling. There was some, just some moments of where we really had some therapy sessions where we really, broke down some barriers and became friends with some of the people that was there. And also on top of this, we were just exposed to a level of luxury that only a trick would give me back in the day. But Aria is amazing in the sense that how she, creating these moments is definitely a skill that she has. I can definitely attest to the experience not only being just luxury moments of like that, but also being a powerful moment of community building and really coming together and breaking the yokes and having the hard conversations on what are the barriers that's stopping us as a group of trans women, a group of Black women, a group of women who want to build community. What are the barriers that's stopping us from doing that? So it definitely was a powerful moment for me that I'll never forget. I got 2 more questions. I did want to ask you, Mariah. So Aria just talked about like being passed the torch and, carrying these heavy issues. And we recently just lost one of our icons with Monica Roberts. She's an icon in our community. You have done work in, there are some laws in New Orleans, the crimes against nature laws, that historically has targeted LGBT people of color in the area, creating a clear and effective pathway to disproportionately incarcerating trans people. And in your past, you have worked, and currently you have done work around dismantling these historic laws that are still affecting people now. Can you talk about that work a little bit? Because I want people to understand that when we are talking about disparities, these are long time, decades, centuries long things that we're coming up against that our elders fought against or were affected by, and then now we've been passed the torch and we are still carrying the responsibility of dismantling these kind of structural systems that are putting us in jail, leading us to homelessness, or so and so and so and so. Can you talk about you combating these fucking archaic laws in your city?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Crimes Against Nature law, one is an extremely outdated law that charges one with a felony and did have a sex offender registry requirement. And that law stated that if any two beings engaged in non-procreative sex, then they could be charged with this law. And this law, yeah, sorry, I kiki too. This law, it this law immediately adversely affected same gender loving people, um, and then went on to adversely and disproportionately affect trans women, specifically Black trans women. And I can speak to her story because she's one of my dear friends, and I have consent to. But Wendy Cooper actually is a dear friend who fought against that for a long time because she was affected by the Crimes Against Nature statute, and she was forced to register as a sex offender. And me just being young and carefree, I didn't know anything about this when I was in my early 20s, and surviving and realizing that this could have easily been me, and just seeing the way that it had affected her, and it had really limited her life in a way that limited her from accessing housing and benefits. It was just really heartbreaking. But even through all of that, she still went on to earn a master's degree, while fighting to clear her name of that off the registry. And so Wendy actually did the work to get the ball rolling, to get that law actually repealed and revised. And then I more so came in and helped facilitate the conversations around why this law needs to be completely abolished, right? and then went on to serve on the mayor's task force where we discussed policing laws that kind of encouraged the pinpointing of trans people to charge them with this law. Kind of like walking while trans in New York, but a second line and down in New Orleans while trans, right? So, I mean, we had the condom law here for a long time that said if you were caught with more than one condom in your purse, you could be charged with solicitation, which back then was an automatic crimes against nature charge and an automatic sex offender registry requirement. And so, because of the organizing that has been done by women before me and the experiences that have been shared by them, and then my ability to be able to come in and really be that facilitator and that voice and to get into rooms to speak to people that they didn't have access to really empowered me to just help this message reach the ears that it needed to reach, but also just wanting to acknowledge that Wendy was the catalyst that really helped bring all this to light and just shed a light on the discriminatory laws, one of many discriminatory laws in Louisiana. And so it wasn't just me, it was me working side by side with Wendy, but Wendy had already begun that work long before I came into the picture. So it was just an honor and a privilege to pick up some of the fight with her.
We talked about Wendy in one of our Trans 101 segments in a couple of, maybe like a year ago. So we definitely have featured Wendy's work here and talked about her getting that ball rolling. I think that's amazing, and I think it's beautiful, and I think this is a perfect example of why every city should have a LGBT task force. Every city should have some kind of committee where you are talking to the people on the ground, talking to the people in community, so that we can give you the nuance of how some of these, because I'm sure somebody wasn't even paying attention, or somebody was who didn't know how this uniquely adversely put us in situations where it's making it even harder for us. Me being on a fucking sex registry, how that can affect me getting a job, how that can affect me getting housing. These are direct effects of my housing disparity, direct effects, causes of my housing disparity, and causes of me not being able to work. And so have it for something that has...
But the violence that you face because of being on that registry, right? Like, people seek you out
Something that you didn't...
Right, for something that's mischaracterized. Like, I was engaged in the solicitation, but give me my misdemeanor and let me go on.
Right. This is consensual sex between me and some grown men.
Right. But you're trying to give me slap me with a whole felony and a law and a requirement that is so heavily associated with child molestation, which is also a very sharp stereotype that we have to combat every single day. Not because we are, but that's the picture that people have painted. We saw it with the bathroom bills, and they're gonna assault your wife and your children, and the Gain Act, like all of these stereotypes, like we have to fight against. So imagine walking around with this ID documentation that has it written across the front, then mailers that are sent out across the entire area where you live that has your address and everything on it. It makes you a sitting duck.
So this is my last question for both of you. I want to know, what does it look like, feel like, smell like, act like? What does it look like to thrive, not just thrive, not just survive, but to thrive? What does it look like to thrive in this world and not just survive? Because it seems like some of us are just surviving. How do we as a community thrive?
I think, we get asked that question so much, but it's like, I wasn't born with it, so I don't know. I don't know. I think my idea of thriving as a community means we're not running these organizations. We are We are, doing the things that really bring us joy other than this, right? Other than being vessels of this work. What if we want to be news anchors or sportscasters or doctors and lawyers and real estate agents, or we want to be entrepreneurs? Seeing ourselves in these places, seeing ourselves represented um, in these in these media outlets, being able to say, Brianna Jenkins is my lawyer, and she's representing me in my civil lawsuit against a client who didn't like my establishment. I'm I'm thriving. Like when I can go to my people to get what I need, whether I need to go get a checkup or whether I need to go get a movie ticket, right? It's like that's when our community is thriving, when we're living off of the labor of each other. So yes, I think like I wanna buy a car. Well, I'm going to Diamond's car dealership and buy my car because guess what? In the white community, they can say that. Well, my neighbor, he's a lawyer. My other neighbor is a doctor who does my annual physical. The other one sold me my house. You know, the other one is my travel agent. The other one cuts my lawn from their lawn cutting service. They don't even have to leave. They don't even have to leave their neighborhood to get everything they need. They could just pick up the phone and dial 3 doors down and they got it. I want to see a neighborhood where all my neighbors is trans, like, and trans professionals that got coin and don't have to worry about their lights being turned off or them being fired for a job because of transphobia or xenophobia or anything like that. Like I want like the real meaning of what it means to thrive, like carefree living. Child, pick up the phone and ask me if I want to take a vacation, and I have the means to do it. Like that's what. Yes, we deserve that. I mean, I would love to live like the girls on Sex in the City, but okay. But yeah, that's
That's
what I think.
thriving. That's literally
Right,
thriving. To me,
right. I want to
thriving
thrive.
is more than enough. Thriving is
Right.
it's not just I'm dealing with a little bit. Thriving is more than what I need. I want to be that person. What about you, Aria?
Forgetting about the word oppressed. Go ahead, Ari.
Well, I think I'm a little more morbid, y'all. Like, we live under capitalism, and because of a capitalist economy and society, like, poverty will always be an experience, right, under this landscape. But I think for me, a state of thriving that I really imagine for trans people is that that we own our own banks and our own grocery stores, that we own our neighborhoods, right? And that that we move away from, as much as we can, from the idea of scarcity, that we're not in competition with each other for the same resources, that there's actually, an abundance, and there's room for everybody. I think as soon as we move away from just token representation, right? When there's so many trans actors in Hollywood that, we don't know all their names, like there's A-list, B-list, C-list, D-list. I mean, I think that's thriving when there's, when sex work is not the only profession option for us, because for so many in so many different parts of the country, it's either nonprofit or, doing survival sex work or social justice, or maybe like retail are like the three main gateways for us to get a coin. But when we start actually seeing us sort of immersed in different industries at different levels, like that to me is thriving. When we have, more than 5 trans folks to like look up to, who've quote unquote made it. You know what I mean? That's the visual that I have.
And I would also add, for me, thriving is us having less barriers around loving ourselves in regards to our beauty, in regards to our bodies, less barriers in finding love and companionship, really being able to run the gamut of the type of men that we can attract and be with in loving, healthy relationships. The type of women, if we are lesbian, whatever means that we have to get access to love and care and love within ourselves and love getting love outside of our from people outside of ourselves. I think whatever those barriers in community, I think thriving for me as a trans woman is those barriers being knocked down and we're able to navigate love in a healthy, productive, loving way, that we are out here just in relationships with ourselves and with our loved ones that just looks beautiful from the inside and out. So that's what thriving is for me. So before we go, we have to talk about an event that House of Tulip and Transgender Cultural District is sponsoring and putting on. It's a fundraising event. And so Aria, tell us about it.
Yeah, so we're so excited and we can't wait for y'all to see it. It happens tomorrow.
Lies.
No, girl, we're pre-recording, girl.
Oh, yeah.
You are about to lose your job.
I'm like, wait, why did Marcy, Sean is over here like, what? I was like, we pre-recorded. Okay, let me start that up. I'm so excited about this event. I can't wait for y'all to see it. The House of Tulip and the Transgender District are partnering together to have a winter gala fundraiser because we share a shared goal in combating poverty for our local communities here in San Francisco and New Orleans. House of Tulip is already underway with their housing strategy and their housing program, but the Trans District is also launching one in January. And so that's what we're raising funds for. And the event happens tomorrow night, 5:30 Pacific, 7:30 Central Time, and 8:30 Eastern Time. And we have an incredible lineup. We have, of course, Miss Diamond Stylz of Marsha's Play as one of our hosts, and she is taking the hosting stage with T.S. Madison. And then we have some special guests. We have Raquel Willis, who is a critically acclaimed writer and activist. Who else we got? Mariah, who else we got?
We have India Moore, who is actress, model, star of the groundbreaking show Pose. We have Teak Milan. Is that correct? We also have Eve, Trace Lissette.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Who else? We have performing Never Ending Nina, one of my beautiful sisters here from the city of New Orleans, who resides in Los Angeles, California.
She has an amazing voice. She has an amazing voice. I love her.
We have Lion Babe.
Yeah, we have some live music from Lion Babe and from Dawn Richard of Danity Kane.
Formerly of Danity Kane,
right? But many may know her from the days of Danity Kane. And
we got YZ.
We got YZ, and Dominique Morgan.
Yes.
Who will know, she actually is the executive director of Black and Pink. but she's also a pop vocalist, and she is releasing. She's already released her second album this week, and so you all can see her do a music video premiere live performance tomorrow, and download her album on iTunes and wherever music is sold.
And
we have
Tanya Boy Cannon from The Voice.
Mm-hmm. And we have Jessica Six, who is led by Nomi Ruiz, who's Puerto Rican trans woman. They've had hits in the dance music world across the globe, and more. We have so many more surprises up our sleeves.
So I really want y'all who are listening to get the context of this. This is like literally it's never happened. We have an event that is put on by trans people, featuring trans artists, featuring trans hosts. This is fucking major. I want y'all to understand the magnitude of this. We always talk about how we want to have programming that centers us, that's led by us. This is literally like an award show, like an event that's literally for us, by us. Like FUBU is fuck. Why wouldn't you support that?
Yeah, and I want to point out, in our industry and nonprofit and social justice, we put this event together for two reasons. One, we as organizations often work in silos. But Mariah and I have been thought partners on so many different things. And it just made sense for us to do a joint fundraiser for our projects and to support work that we're both doing on different ways. And so really promoting that, that we can come together and partner with each other. Most nonprofits actually do their galas by themselves, but we wanted to sort of share our resources to make it an even bigger magical night. And that was part of why we did it. We also wanted to, it's the holidays, it's cold, it's COVID, it's the flu, it's the cold, it's all the things. And we really, 2020 has just been a roller coaster of a year. And we just, it's a free event. We're not charging anything for our gala. And we really just want people to come and just pull it up on their phone, their iPad, on the HDMI cord to the TV, whatever they got to do to just get in the moment and celebrate and have good times and dance in their socks or play it in their car or wherever you are, just to have some feel good moments. And that's really what it's about. Of course we're raising money, but we wanted it to be free because we wanted anybody to be able to access it, and just hear exclusive original content from these creators and performers, and yeah, just to have a good night before the holidays. Especially as trans people, the holidays can be, I don't know what it is, but I already start feeling it right now. There's that trigger of oh, I'm gonna be alone, and oh this and oh that. And so just for us to come together how we can, which is virtually, and pop off and celebrate and have a good time.
So I'm going to have all the information down in the bottom. The link is going to be down there for you to go. Like Aria just said, it is free. You ain't got shit to do. We know it's going to be a fucking lockdown, but especially a month before. We don't know what Trump going to do, but a month before we get a new administration. So what you say, Mariah?
He about to lose his job.
Yeah.
You're about to lose
So you don't got nothing to do. It's free. So come and support your girls and your guys that's gonna be there. Come, and the non-binary people gonna be there too. So come fuck with us. Let us know what you think and bring your good white
Bring your liquor.
Bring your good white Judies with the deep pockets.
Yes.
So they can come and enjoy the entertainment and give and support the work that these two orgs are doing. Oh my God, I'm just so excited. And so with that, I want to thank y'all for being on the show. I want to thank y'all for coming and sharing your experiences and sharing your thoughts and sharing your brilliance with me. I tell y'all all the time that I think both of y'all are just brilliant people, and just being able to have the honor to share y'all with my audience, I really, really appreciate it for you taking the time and, spending this hour with me.
We love Diamond Stylz and Marsha's plate.
Yes,
Where
we do.
can I take a to-go plate?
You can.
Wait, I need two. I buy my own Tupperware.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
If you want to hear conversations like this that center trans experience, search Marsha's Plate on all podcast platforms.
The time has come for you